evening. We're here. Would you say hello to the person next to you, just in case you forgot? Great. And then would you turn around and say hello to the person that's been staring at the back of your head for an hour and a half?
Send them a good wish.
Nobody's staring at our back.
Send them a good wish.
Wanted to share with you a little bit about what we've been doing the last couple weeks. Is we all live in different places around the country, so we got together on the phone and then earlier here tonight and practiced having conversation with each other. And some interesting things came out of the conversation, and so we wanted to share those with you tonight, and also have conversation with you. So as we talk a little bit, be thinking about a question or a topic that you'd like to discuss with us. That means doing two things at once, but I know we can do it. So the couple points that came up. Sister Jenna, we started talking in both conversations, personal accountability came up. And your experience living in a compassionate community, which most of us can only dream what that might be like. And I know you're going to share a little bit of that.
Yeah.
With Girish, in your work in Silicon Valley, in working with, is it Santa Clara County, to work with Santa Clara County so that it would declare itself International County of Compassion. That's no small feat. And what does it mean? And what we talked about and Girish's point was, how do we measure the impact of compassion? How do we measure our decisions and that compassionate aspect? What kind of impact does it have? And with Sharif, it was, we don't know how to measure our humanity. And each of these 3 points I never considered in that particular way. And it just brought out how important it is to hear each other's stories and be in conversation, because it expands your understanding and allows that compassionate aspect of us to come forward. So where would we like to start? Or where do we like to continue in our conversation? Kind of what's been happening already tonight that's deepened or put a twist on what we've been talking about?
Well, I was, when we were having that part of our conversation, one of the things that came up for me is, what is this compassion that we're talking about? Each of us in the room has an idea of what compassion means. It's why you're in the room. But perhaps compassion may be something very different for you, something outside of your cultural expectation, your cultural reality. And if you're looking at the world in a particular way, seeing the world a particular way, an action that someone else may be taking may not look like compassion to you. It may not look like it's community building. I live in Portland, Oregon, which is at least arguably the best city in the States.
We'd have to argue about that.
Well, no, okay, so it's
Seriously.
never on anyone's number one, but it's on everybody's top 10. So by
right.
process of elimination, that makes us the best. I'm glad we got that settled.
We
Okay.
did not have it settled at all.
Okay.
But
I
So,
thought Washington DC was the best city.
No,
Oh,
it's
you,
not. It's Sacramento. What is wrong with you people?
but there's no question where I started from. Camden, New Jersey is Time Magazine's worst city in America. And I am from the worst parts of the worst city in America. And, you know, a life of welfare, public housing, casual violence. When National Public Radio went looking for the worst high school in America, they went to my alma mater, which makes you proud, you know. And it made me think of an instance of compassion in Camden. I have a friend whose brother was addicted to heroin, and at the time, Camden was awash in heroin. And she grabbed him off the streets, threw him in a closet, locked the door, and stood on the other side of that door for 3 days while he worked through his demon. And there are times when he would say, "Oh, okay, I'm better. You can open the door now." And she knew not to buy that. And then he promised, and then he threatened, and then he screamed, and then he cried. And she stood at that door listening to all of this. And at the end of the 3rd day, he just said, "I'm done." And that's when she knew. She opened the door to her brother, who was covered in his own excrement. And you may not think that that was an act of compassion. How many of you could do that? How many of us do the opposite of that? How many of us enable the addictions of the people we claim to love because we don't want to make a fuss? So when I talk about compassion and compassionate communities, I'm not talking about cute, fuzzy bunny love. I'm talking about the love that straightens things out, the way that our societies need to be straightened out. The love that rakes us all clean, even though the process may be breaking to the institutions that we have become addicted to. So I'm inviting us to a different level of compassion. I won't necessarily say a higher level of compassion. It may be a great deal messier level of compassion. But it's something that I think that is waiting for each and every one of us.
I really like that sentence, the love that straightens things out, that straightens things out. That could be a measure of our decisions. Like, and what I'm about to do, will it straighten anything out? And if it won't, then go deeper into love until you find the way that does. That's going on a Post-it note on my mirror in the bathroom. Okay. So what else comes to mind?
I mean, the question is, we call compassion, you call love, you call empathy, you call by so many different names. Each one has its own connotation, slightly different variation, but they all aim at the same, is that we are looking at the other person, not as other person. Because the moment you call other, violence has occurred. You have to see other as you, because we are all the same human family. And that's where what he says, love, it's another way of saying compassion, because you are putting yourself in his shoes and see what is the medicine.
Yeah.
And that is the medicine she gave him.
And so what I'm hearing you say is violence starts the moment we see the other rather than the self. in someone else.
The separation, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to perhaps kind of jump in here because when I look at where we are collectively, I do go back to the individual. I do go back to ourselves, and sometimes that might be perhaps the most challenging responsibility that we can take. That at what point or at what part did I actually contribute to the state that we're in right now? And how brave am I to model self-compassion? Areas within our own personality that we are challenged by, like getting a little bit too upset, angry, competing, insecure. Do I have the compassion to even project that energy towards myself to see how do I aid self? Because I do believe that if we get the capacity to aid the self, it will be a contribution in aiding others. So it's like there's something so deeply entrenched at a personal level where I'm not quite sure how much of that we're observing on our journey.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about doing compassion to those dirty, nasty, stinking people in the soup kitchen. I'm going to help them out. Doesn't quite get it. Okay, and
But they still get a C+.
Yes, right.
Give them a C+.
With a little note that says needs improvement, maybe. And so the challenge is, how can I see that my compassion is helping another, but my compassion, if I'm doing it right, is also helping me?
Of course.
So the work that I was doing in Sri Lanka with the organization Sarvodaya had a motto, we build the road and the road builds us. So my act of compassion by helping a community build a road or build a hospital or dig a well is, it helps to define my own sense of being, my own sense of worth, and that definition builds me, and then makes me a little bit. It'll be easier for me to take the next step of compassion, and then the next and the next, and then I'll get an A.
I just want to say I'm careful about that because the reason why I'm careful about that is sometimes we go in to aid and get trapped.
Yes.
And then we lose sight on our own capacity to take care and nurture ourselves. And so I do go back again to what I was sharing earlier, that it's a kind of attention that you pay from yourself when you enter a room in a space. I came in today, and there was a beautiful singer, the banjo player, and what was her name again? I'm so sorry. Hannah. Gosh, it's senior moments. But I came and I saw Hannah sitting by herself, and I just wanted to just find out who she was. What's your name? Where are you from? And I met another lady, and I went up to them, and the reason why I'm sharing that with you, a sense of self-compassion makes you aware of everything around you. And it's not just for people who you think are suffering, because you've suffered. So you carry the narrative of self-compassion anyway. So it's natural for you to reach out and care about everyone's presence, like, I see you. Does that make sense for everyone? Like, it's not just when it gets so bad that I'm able to show up to the story. It's got to be that I feel things in me, and I've been showing up to me. That's why I'm of service.
If I add to what Sister Jenna is saying, is you have to be at peace with yourself to be able to project that peace. You have to be compassionate to yourself. Only then you are able to project the compassion and take acts, compassionate acts. So it's important for you to develop compassion within yourself. Forgive yourself, because biggest thing humans have is we don't forgive ourselves. We do something wrong and we gyrate and gyrate. I did something wrong. We don't do any forgiveness or ask for forgiveness or say, well, I made a mistake and I won't do it again. You have to forgive yourself. These are all intertwined. These emotions are all combined together, and that makes you what you are.
Yeah.
And then you will feel other person, not as other, but your reflection in him. And then you will do for him what you will do for yourself.
Thank
And you
you.
already learned
Yes.
to forgive yourself, you forgive the person.
Yeah, thank you, Garesh. How much time do we have? Where are we?
8:35 now.
Well, I don't.
Another
yeah.
hour, I think.
We do?
Yeah.
Do we have time for, we have 10 fingers of time. We have 15 fingers of time. Do I hear 20 fingers of time? All right, 15. All right, we sold.
Can I mention about,
Well,
go ahead.
we can do both, but I'd like to see if there are floor mics, and if someone has a question that we can discuss together. And are floor mics possible?
So while they're finding them, maybe.
Yes,
we
this
can-
is your chance.
yeah.
No, the thing I wanted to mention was I am the board member of Silicon Valley Interreligious Council in Silicon Valley, and our motto is to build harmony among religions so that we can build just and compassionate society. That's our motto. So that's why we are involved in compassion games. How many of you have heard Charter for Compassion? Just a few hands. Charter for Compassion is an organization started which promotes compassion institutionally. And part of that is a compassion communities. And you heard already during the day, Compassionate California, Compassionate Capital Region. And so these are the communities, they are declaring themselves compassionate and then carry out projects, active actions to to be compassionate. This is a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. Bottom-up approach, you go to grassroots and develop the feeling of compassion. Top-down, you go to your civic leaders, and have them declare and adapt this Charter for Compassion, and thereafter look at every policy. There's no point in just declaring compassionate if you don't do anything with it. So they will then look at every policy, every resolution, and say, what is the compassionate impact? And we are coming out with definition of what compassionate impact is. So that way they can say, okay, this is compassionate index level 1 to 10, and this is a 10. Oh, this is a 1. This is no good for anybody. And thereby, they would know, if nothing else, somebody has thought through it. And thinking through it, they may realize that this is not a good resolution. So that's what we are trying to do in Santa Clara County, where the Board of Supervisors officially adopted the charter in April, end of April, and they have asked us to form a stewardship group that will carry this further. And that is happening on this Sunday, coming Sunday. We have a meeting on Sunday to form the stewardship group.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
A question on the stage?
Yes, we're ready. Do we have some
Mic ready?
microphones?
I just feel my heart breaking for the world. And I feel like we need places where we can just cry and scream and pray and let something open up inside of us to find a better way than just from our minds that have created this whole mess. And I don't know how to, like, it feels like we need rooms, like birthing rooms of prayer and crying. And people need to be held.
Yeah. It's so funny that you just shared so openly. Thank you. Because right before Girish started to speak, I was going to mention Why I know California will be definitely a spearheader, but also many other states, because we have 8 branches of our Brahma Kumaris here. It's funny that you mention that, because speaking about compassionate communities, what does it mean to have a compassionate community? And I've seen examples where strangers just walk into your house and unload and feel safe enough to let individuals, I mean, the sisters know, I'm breaking apart here, because they have a level of interior commitment to their own transformation and their own empowerment. And I think we need to find each other to feel that sense of trust and connectivity. You are right. This is no more about the head game. This is about what I said earlier. I came in the room, I saw Hannah sitting by herself. There were other people in the room. And so to what extent are we paying attention to small acts of goodness and small acts of compassion before it gets even 10 times worse than what it is today? In essence, don't give up. We're at the most incredible time to bring the love that we know we are. There is a love that is untapped.
I'm tapping into it. I
Right.
feel it as I let my heart break. And I'm just giving all day long. But feeling like collectively we need these places where we're letting ourselves break.
Yeah.
Do you live in Sacramento?
I live in North Nevada.
Oh, we have places there.
Yeah.
You can
No,
break your
I
heart
have
there
a
as
place where I'm doing that, but I mean
Right. But
collectively,
for everyone, yes.
we
yes.
need this. So I
Well,
don't
just
know.
today alone, we conducted sessions in 4,000 centers today, just to give you an idea. So I think when it's so subtle, when it's very pure and very subtle and peaceful, no one beats drums. But you must trust that these pure feelings are amplifying change, and it is working. And I think why conferences like this are so vital, we have to stay engaged in performing good karma. Despite how bad it seems to be, we've got to keep doing good so we can at least have some treasures of good experiences recorded in the soul. But at the same token, we have to take care of ourselves and be very genuine, very sincere, and as honest as we can possibly be with the way that we're feeling, if we're going to get to a compassionate state of living together.
And thank you for sharing that, and maybe what some of us weren't brave enough to admit, that we do want those spaces and that we do want that collective healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been doing that, and my family life is transformed. Like my husband and daughter, like she knows she
Wow.
can be anything. She's so loved. It's like we've done it, and I came from abuse, rape, all that stuff, white trash, everything. And I've done it, and now I want to just duplicate it and just keep duplicating it till we
I forgot to add one more virtue, be patient.
Thank you. Anyway, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for all the work everyone's doing.
And another question, I think there's one in the back, and then there are a couple up front too. And I'm diligently looking at the time cards in the back. We have 7 fingers, okay.
So I'm wondering what advice or suggestions you can give about developing compassion, if that's even the most appropriate response, to number 45, he whose name will not be spoken. You know who I'm talking
Yeah.
about, and his administration.
Well, I have a comment about that, and then I think maybe all of us do. I was waiting for this to happen. This is a point along a continuum that we've been moving toward, because we haven't addressed anything deeply enough. And any of you that are self-reflective and notice your own pattern of experience, that if you don't learn a lesson when it's super small, you'll learn, and if you don't learn it when it's a little bit bigger, or a little bit bigger. You'll learn it when it's gigantic. And I hope that this is as big as it's going to get. I hope. But if we focus on what it seems like, then we miss the opportunity. If we understand what it really is, which is a collective reflection of what we haven't addressed. And what Sister Jenna and Sharif and Gurish about that communication between people, ending the violence in seeing someone as other, starting right there. That's what will shift, but we all need to do that. And so that's what I'd like to share, and then Sharif.
Very quick story. I was doing a lot of work in Sri Lanka and to end the war there, and Sarvoti was doing peace meditations. And one of the peace meditations that we did, we had 500,000 people show up dressed in white to meditate for peace. Could not get a single news outlet to cover it.
Did anyone die? That was the problem.
I'm sorry. I was the one that called the BBC. And the reporter says, well, do you think there'll be violence?
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
And so I was, so in this amazing sea of people, I was going around interviewing people as to why they came to the peace meditation. And I have 2 translators with me so I can actually understand what people were saying. And I went to a woman who had come out of the temple, and she misunderstood my question, which was really cool because the question that she answered was so much better. She thought I said, why was she coming out of the temple? And she said, I went into the temple to give offerings to all of the people who helped me to come to the peace meditation. She said, I gave offerings to my daughter who fixed my lunch to carry with me. I gave offerings to my son-in-law who gave me the 60 rupees to catch the bus. And I gave offerings to my husband who told me not to come. He said it was going to be too dangerous, I was going to be gone too long, that who's going to fix his dinner? And she said, he helped me to understand how important it was to come. So the daughter and the son-in-law became the road that eased her way there. And the husband became the defining elements of the path. So all of them were the instrument of destiny. Trump is the instrument of our destiny. He has cleared a path for us. What we do on the path, we can bog down, we can say, oh, I planned on watching TV for 4 years and now I've got to be active to change our world. Oh no. But what we can do is recognize, not lament, that when the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, every single cell of that caterpillar is used to create the butterfly. So what we have to be doing, as opposed to saying, oh, we're trapped in this chrysalis with all these caterpillar cells, it's like, yeah, we're trapped in the chrysalis with all the caterpillar cells, let's make a butterfly. I think that's our purpose, that's our path, that's our challenge. I am thankful for those who are walking the path, but I'm also thankful for those who are helping to define that path.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Do you want to do your exercise? We have one finger left. Would you like to? You mentioned a kind of an ending exercise with everyone.
Okay, I was thinking about my wonderful brother, number 45. And I think that it's important for us to acknowledge that he is God's child. And some children are naughty and some are nice. but the mother loves the child, and so does the father. And so one of the things that we could practice is how to offer a very, very, very deeply sacred practice in our Brahma Kumari community. It's called Mansa Seva. Mansa means the mind, and Seva means service. So from your mind, I'd like you to wish the person behind you, without looking at them, to be benefited in their lives or life. Depends on where you're coming from. Wish the person behind you from your mind, or wish the person to your right or to your left. Internally, just really feel it, like I really wish for the person next to me to be benefited, to be okay. And while you're walking around doing the conference for the next 2 days, observe a stranger and wish them well. And this is called service through the mind, because you'll find that as things seem to physically deteriorate more and more, your mind's going to get affected by what you're seeing externally. So we're going to need to develop the mental ability so it's not so influenced by the external realities.
Thank you very much for having us here and being in this conversation with us.
Om Shanti.